Cheers, guys. Epix 911, welcome to the Elitist Geek VR news for Saturday, September 17th, 2016. Right into the preamble we go. So I got a really good chuckle out of yesterday's VR news. Look, I never claim to not have an inner 12-year-old who gets the best of me from time to time. Yesterday was one of those examples. Yeah, when I was researching for that story and I got to, the hedge thing, trimming his bush just kind of made me giggle. So I thought, okay, I'm going to bring that up. And just super quick background, that buddy of mine, he's my best friend. I may have mentioned it before, but we've been buddies since grade 4. So we were 9, 10 years old. So that is a 30-some-odd year friendship. And we've got really biting, sarcastic humor, very deadpan in kind of how we deliver. And the mispronunciation I've touched on in the past. But anyways, so my whole thing, and I didn't tell him about it because the spontaneous reactions are usually the best. When I got to that point, there's kind of a micro pause if you look for it, but I wanted it to be deadpan and just come across as regular. So his reaction, totally agree with those of you that commented on it, was just absolutely priceless and spontaneous. So I told him today, I texted him that a few people got a chuckle out of that, so he was amused. But, anyways, that's not going to be a mainstay. It's just once in a while, you have fun with it. It's Friday. I threw in a little bit of frat house humor. So there you have it. Next up, some game stuff before we get into the news. So Crytek has a game called Robinson the Journey. This is a sci-fi survival game. We know of a couple of other examples, the Solus Project, etc., kind of in that same vein. Now, they make a really clear point about saying that the in-game graphics don't necessarily reflect actual gameplay. And personally, I think that's because it was maybe on a dev station or very alpha. Whatever. I've got some theories on the why. We don't need to get into that right now because I'm going to touch on another game after. But the survival aspect is one that I enjoy. And I know it's kind of getting beaten to death, but this game, and I love Crytek. Look, Crytek has always delivered decent graphics, and I've just enjoyed the gameplay. So this is probably a game I will get as well for the PlayStation 4. The reviewer who tried the game, this was at the Tokyo Game Show, said it had smooth movement, which for me personally I love. And while it didn't make him sick, he did have moments where he got queasy. So hopefully, like I say, they add another form of locomotion, that's not the only one. But I am glad that they have that in there because I do prefer, if given a choice, the smooth movement. But check it out. Looks really good. And I believe they said it was going to be a little bit later, the launch on that. But either way, looks fantastic graphically. Feral Rites. This is a game that I mentioned probably about a week ago in an update. And one of the biggest complaints that I've seen thrown against this game has been the cost. $57.99 Canadian. So US, I'm sure it was 40-something dollars. The devs have come out and acknowledged, not directly that some of the more colorful things that people had to say about the price in their game. But anyways, long story short, they've cut the price down temporarily. I picked it up yesterday for $11.99 Canadian. So even if it ends up being horrible, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to get at least my $12 worth back out of it. So yeah, that's something I'm going to try now. And what I would love to see is sales figures before and after, because you got to think part of the motivation here is people weren't buying the game. And the people who were buying the game all had that feedback about it being too expensive and not worth the price of admission, that it was almost like a forced application of VR, an unnecessary application of VR. So praise the devs for at least acknowledging some of that, and the people who had already purchased it, apparently they get, I think it was, you can check out the link, heavily discounted or some free titles. There's a list. Again, look at the link and you'll see. So if you were one of the people who paid full price for that, there's still going to be a benefit for you. So no, you don't just have to sit around and watch other people buy it for, 20% of the price you did. So props to the devs for that at least. Remains to be seen for me personally if it's a good game, but like I said, I am going to get to it. So let's get into some news, guys. And the first one, it is still game related, but that's why I've made it the first item. And it's regarding Resident Evil 7. And it confirms kind of one of my fears that I had about, and I've been clear, look, gameplay is what's going to make the difference. If the games are good, it doesn't have to have the best graphics in the world, it just needs to be a good game, period. And that was my hope with Res Infinite, that they maintain what made Res so good when they do it in VR. Now, with Resident Evil 7, it's more a case of what I had said about them not being able to pull off, regular PS4 type graphics in VR. And this is kind of proof of that, or just an example of that, because the reviewer himself said that it looked, and his quote was, like something you'd expect on the PlayStation 3. So what they've done is they've essentially just ported 7 to VR, but they've had to cut and scale back on the polygons, on the textures as a result. Now, that's okay, again, in my opinion, as long as the gameplay is good. And because it's ported directly, the gameplay should be as good or bad as the gameplay is in the regular version of 7. So we're going to watch that one closely and report on that, probably shortly after launch. And actually, no, we won't, because January 24th was the release date. Just remember that. So it's going to be a few months, but who knows? Maybe it gives them an opportunity to tweak it a little bit, and that would be just my one word of caution. Again, I know I'm kind of preaching to the choir with most of you and kind of sound like a tape recording, but we just need to make sure that, and if you've got buddies that are going to get PlayStation VR, that look, the graphics aren't going to be as good in general, but the gameplay and experience has the potential of being vastly better. That should kind of be the focus. I understand Sony's not going to market it that way directly, because it would just be egg on their face with all the backlash they've received regarding the PS4 Pro being so woefully underpowered. Next up, Raw Data and The Gallery, which is from a Canadian development company, have both reported breaking the $1 million mark in sales. So that's fantastic news. You guys know, anyone who's watched previous videos, that I love Raw Data. And if all I had was time, I'd be playing so much more of it. A few of you really helped me with that. Sano gave me lots of tips on that, etc. So I've basically unlocked the content that's available so far, and I still enjoy it. It is an awesome stress relief game. Crappy day at work, throw on the HMD and just literally go to town. And being robot based, and just, it has the right elements to me of kind of everything for quick jump in, play, leave. The Gallery was the one that I showed about the shipwreck on the island. I did a quick look on that. Well, I did one on Raw Data as well, but you know what? Deservedly so for these guys. Really happy to hear that. That's peanuts, obviously, when console games can sell 1 million copies and generate tens and hundreds of millions in revenue. But hey, it's a start, and it's something to build on. Next up, we have some software from Google, which will allow you to basically look at the UK's Prime Minister's residence, which is 10 Downing Street. So kind of like 24 Sussex for Canadians or the White House for Americans. It gives UK residents, well, really anybody across the world, access to 10 Downing Street, which I gotta admit I was kind of curious about because so many previous things, like the whole Falkland Island with Margaret Thatcher, a lot of history in my lifetime around that. So it's something I'm going to check out. Obviously, it's more on the experience side of things and not gameplay, but hey, virtual tourism. That's what this is really an example of. The next story. This one's a doozy, guys. Schlock time indeed. Remember when I shared, and if you don't, I'm going to put the link to that video below, but I shared a story about a virtual reality peripheral that I've pretty much forced myself to forget about using brain bleach because it was disturbing to me visually, right? And comes out of Japan, and Japan, just like Germany, which is half of what I am, they do game shows unlike any two other countries on the planet. There was a German game show called Tutti Frutti that I remember watching as a kid in Holland. Anyways, look it up. Tutti Frutti, Germany, say no more. Japanese game shows, same thing. Look up this stuff if you want to be entertained. No countries do it like those two. So on that note, at the recent Tokyo 2016 show, there was a company, M2 company, that had a booth set up. And the virtual reality experience was basically a female that you could talk to, interact with. I don't remember if it was specifically like one of those digital girlfriend apps or whatever. The point being that they could grope the character. And that's one thing if you're in the privacy of your own home, you're an adult, a hormonal teen, whatever. Totally different story. This was in public, and to make matters slightly more scarring and disturbing, they brought in a female mannequin. So you get all these guys putting the HMDs on, not just fondling, the girl in the game, they're fondling the frickin' mannequin. So trade show guys stepped in, rightfully so, and kiboshed that, told them to leave the mannequin out of it. So they have done that. But that's probably the first instance I've ever heard of something like that. So who knows? Maybe it's going to start a whole trend of, PG type stuff. And look, I'm all for choice, freedom of choice for stuff. I'm an adult. People shouldn't have to dictate that for me. But it is a trade show where there's kids. So again, I completely understand the reasons for it. Because, yeah, nobody needs to be seeing that, especially in a public place like that. But I did get a good chuckle out of it. Next up, we have Sonys VR Plans. And Sony has obviously jumped into virtual reality with both feet. Like, they are basically all in. We've got their device. We've got a more powerful PlayStation 4 coming out, the Pro. We've got a lot of launch titles. We have games in development. Sony is fully positioned to take VR on head first, right? So even though they basically jumped in feet first, they're going through this methodically. So it's interesting. Part of their plans were revealed for their kind of short-term and long-term, that while those plans are going to be very VR ambitious, what's kind of absent from that is any kind of a mobile strategy. And at first I scratched my head on that, but it makes sense if you think about it. Microsoft, for their part, all the Xbox style games, like console games, are going to be released as PC versions. So we kind of got the sense with Microsoft that the convergence with the PC platform was almost there. It was almost complete. Maybe one more generation and then it's there. I think this is Sony's equivalent kind of acknowledgement of that look, it's inevitable. We really consoles aren't that different from PCs anymore. We actually use their CPUs, their GPUs, whereas, and I mentioned this a week ago in the other story dealing with something similar, that the days of the proprietary kind of specialized CPUs for consoles are pretty much gone. Those are behind us. So if you've got essentially PC hardware, porting should not be an issue. The negative of all of that, of course, is you're going to have a whole host of games that are, Scorpio ready type games on the Microsoft side of things, but for the average PC person, it's going to be a step back graphically. But most good devs that have an understanding of the PC side of things have accommodated that with texture packs, the ability for PC users to mod their games. And the other side of that equation are companies that don't have that kind of a background, what they're going to do. But if they're anything like From Software and their Dark Souls series, look, by Dark Souls 3, they have become way more PC friendly. If you'd ever played the first Dark Souls, it was basically a one-to-one port, even down to the controller level. And every version, they've just gotten better and better. So those plans to not include mobile in their strategy don't shock me. They seem to be falling, step by step with the strategy of Microsoft and the console industry at large. So very cool. I'm going to go off right now, guys, and start putting that PC together for part 2 in the Build Your Own VR. And then hopefully I've got some time after that. I'll hold off on part 3 for another day or two and do some gaming and get some gaming stuff up, especially now that I have the Game VR controller, Gear VR controller. All right, guys, that's it for Saturday's news. Cheers, and definitely catch you on the VR flip side.